It's the time of year where we're starting to get the warmer temperatures, the warmer water. The bumblebees are just now showing up. We're starting to see pollen on the cars. And with that brings excitement for me of the Atlantic Bonito. Now, if you have never caught Atlantic Bonito before, it is one of the most fun fish to catch because they, pound for pound, are a very strong fish and they are delicious to eat. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about what you need and how to catch these fish. Now, the Atlantic Bonito are migratory fish. We only see them in the North Carolina waters for about a month of the spring season. You'll find them in schools on most high relief structure. So if you live in a city that's close to the beach and you know of a spot within 1 to 2 to 3 miles, there's a high probability that you could get out there and catch the Atlantic Bonito on that structure. Now I'm going to go into reel size and what I preferably like to use for this type of fishing. And I want to give you a disclaimer that this is not an absolute science. This is just based on my experience in the past few years of catching these fish. Now, if I were to standardize the reel size needed for Atlantic Bonito, it would be anywhere from 2,500 to the 4,000 size series. Now, the specific reel is not as important. You want to get a decent reel. Any reel over 80 bucks is going to be something that can withhold these fish. But more importantly is the line size. On my 4,000 series reels, I run 30-pound braid. And on my 2,500, I run anywhere from 10 to 15. Now, you may be wondering, why does this matter? This matters because the casting ability for this 2,500 series is going to be much greater than the 4,000 series. But the jigging capability is going to be a lot safer with the 4,000 series versus the 2,500. What I mean by that is the 30-pound braid is going to be a lot more abrasion resistant, whereas the 10 to 15-pound line is going to be a lot easier to cast. So there's a trade-off. Now, I run both rods. So for example, if I'm going to go fishing, I'm going to have 2 or 3 rods set up with different colors, and I'm going to have different setups for the type of fishing. You may get out there and see the fish on the surface busting bait, and that's when you would want to fish your 2,500 with 10 to 15-pound braid so that you can cast past those fish and reel back through them. You may see them on the bottom 10 to 15 foot from the structure, and that's when you would want to jig the fish. So it's all going to be based on what the fish are doing in that situation on that given day. Now, we've talked about different reels and their applications, but more importantly, we need to talk about your leader material, because these fish have excellent vision. Now, this is going to be an opinion-based question, fluorocarbon versus monofilament. Can you catch fish on monofilament? Yes, you can. The way I see it is I'm using my valuable time out on the water, and I want to be as effective as I can in that time. So I don't mind spending an extra few dollars and getting the fluorocarbon. Now, as far as sizes go, this is going to be very similar to the braid. There's going to be trade-offs in each. If you're using 15 to 20 pound, you're going to get a lot more hookups, but you're also going to lose a lot more fish because it is so thin and they have razor sharp teeth. Now, in comparison, if you're using 30 pound, you're going to land a lot more fish, but you're also not going to get as many strikes because they can see that line. My opinion is if you stay in between that 20 to 30 pound and maybe settle in the middle at 25, you're going to be as effective as you can with the given size. One thing that I should note with these fish is, say you're fishing and you get a hookup and you lose the fish. It is imperative that you check your line because they have razor sharp teeth and they don't necessarily nick the line and knock chunks out of the line. What they do is they actually shave down that line when it passes through their teeth. So you need to cut that section off and retie your bait. This is going to save you a lot of heartache because when you finally do hook a good fish, you want to do everything in your power to land that fish, and checking that line is important. I'll talk about the rod needed for these fish. I think anything 6 to 12 pound and larger is going to be fine for the fish. Can you catch them on a smaller rod than that? Yes, you can. I've caught them on a 4 to 10 before, but it gave that rod an absolute fit, and I was worried about them breaking it when they would go on their runs. These fish hit, and they're not that bad to reel in until they realize that they're hooked and they see the boat. Then they freak out. So when you have a 4 to 10 size rod, that it just doesn't have the backbone to keep them from running underneath the boat and actually going in the opposite direction underneath the boat. So that's why I say 6 to 12 and larger. My favorite rod for these fish is going to be 8 to 17 pound. It's enough to bend the rod over, but I still have plenty of backbone for the fish. If you have a rod already, I'd say use what you have, and you don't necessarily need to go buy a new rod. But if you're looking for a good rod for these, I think you'd be fine with the 6 to 12 to 8 to 17. Okay, say, Eric, I don't want to cast at these fish, I just want to troll. Well, then you need to look into getting the Clark spoons and your number 1 and number 2 planers. Now, the difference between the number 1 and number 2 is going to be the depth. So say you have a 20-foot section of relief and you're trying to troll around that relief and hook up on these fish. You need to pay attention to your depth of your planer, because if you run directly over that structure and your planer actually sinks deeper than the relief, you're going to lose the entire outfit. This is a $15 planer. You've got a couple bucks in line, and then you've got a $5, $6 jig on the back. It can be very expensive very fast. So if you're trolling, you need to pay attention to that. Also, the equipment needed to troll is going to change up. You're going to have to switch over to conventional, and you're going to need a stouter rod to actually troll these planers. So that's something to think about. Another option, if you want to troll, is to use the deep diving Yozuris and Rapalas and any other brand that you specifically like to use. But they're going to work great because you can use conventional or spinning gear. The issue with running the planers on the spinning gear is it actually creates a lot of line twists. You can do it, but you're going to have a lot more issues with your gear in the long run. I preferably like to jig and cast at these fish. That is the most fun fishing that I think that we can do on our coast, and that equates to false albacore, Spanish mackerel, Atlantic bonito, any of those traveling fish that are migrating up and down the coast. And honestly, my favorite bait for these fish, and you can actually buy it at Walmart, is $4 to $5 gotcha jig fish. Now, in my opinion, again, this is opinion based, you should get every color that they have and be ready to switch up on your days of fishing. For example, you may look over at the boat beside you and they're smoking them on pink and you're fishing green. Well, you need to be able to switch over to that and effectively use the color that they're targeting that day. Another thing to note is, if you'll notice on these two different jigs, I have a treble on one and I have an inline hook on the other. Eric, what's the difference? This is opinion based. I feel like I get a lot more hookups with the treble, but I feel like I land a lot more fish with the inline hook. Difference being, these fish are hitting the bait going 10, 15, 20 miles an hour, and sometimes they sideswipe it. Well, when they sideswipe it and they're using a treble hook, they may not actually hook in their mouth. Whereas if they inhale this bait and they get hooked on the inline, it's a solid hookup every time. Do you lose fish with both? Yes. Do you catch fish with both? Yes. This is all personal opinion and based on what you would like to do. I do recommend, if you're going to be using the gotcha jig fish, is that you buy a better hook and replace them as soon as you get them out of the package, because the hooks are terrible quality. You can get different types of hooks. These are actually the VMCs, which I've had pretty good luck with, and they're affordable. One thing I'd like to note about these specific baits is the actual weight of the bait. Most of the fishing that I do here in Wilmington, North Carolina, is anywhere from 20 to 60 feet. So the 1 ounce is a standard that is really applicable in all applications in the areas that I'm fishing. If it were me, I would make sure that I had everything from like a ½ ounce up to an ounce, and be ready to switch up based on what the fish are doing. If the fish are on the surface, you can get by with a ½ ounce, but if you're having a jig deep down into the water column, you're going to need a little bit heavier. Anything bigger than an ounce, I think it doesn't fall very naturally in the water. You can cast it really far, and if you're only going to be retrieving, a 1½ ounce jig would be fine. But if you're trying to naturally bounce it and jig it off the bottom, I just don't think it looks very natural. So that's something to think about. I'd stick to half to 3/4 of an ounce to an ounce, and make sure you have all of the bases covered on that. Now, lastly, finding fish. Again, we've talked about that they like the high relief structure up and down the coast. Well, if you have your GPS unit, you need to look for, the fish will actually school up, and you'll see a section of the water column where there's actually squiggly lines in a 5 to 10 foot area above the structure. These fish move up and down the structure, so you need to be able to see them on your GPS unit to know that they're there. They're pretty obvious when you do find them. So if say you're trying a spot and you're not marking anything in the vicinity, you've trolled around, you're looking at your radar, you're not seeing anything, then the fish are probably not there. These fish come and go, they do follow bait, and I've caught them as close to shore as the inlets on the rock jetty. So it all depends on where the fish are, depending on tide and the bait that they're targeting. So be ready to switch it up. You can try any of these methods and you're going to catch fish. All right, we've talked about rods, reels, baits, leader material, different ways to target these fish, how to see them on your GPS unit. If you guys have any questions about anything, please drop a question down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I see it. If you guys like this type of content and you're not subscribed to the channel, I'd love to have you. I try to put out a video every week when I can. And I'm excited because these bonito will be here within the next month. So stay tuned and hopefully I'll have a video for you. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I'll catch you next time.